What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today we're coming in with a banger of a video, a true hoot and a holler. In today's video, we're talking about the consequences of taking acid, continuing our beloved Consequence series. Hope you guys enjoy this one. Drop a like if you do. Now more than ever, subscribe if you haven't already, because we're dangerously close to 1 million subs, which I'm going to make a video about it, surely, but I just got to say briefly here, insane that I'm even saying that seriously right now. I love you guys. Thank you all for helping me get to this point. And yeah, sub if you haven't already. Drop a like if you enjoy this video. And also, make sure that you check the comment section and the description for a link to my Spotify, because as of today, we are now uploading my videos on Spotify. Now, at first, it's just going to be older content as we catch up to my current videos, but we have around 600 videos that I'm slowly going to be dropping on Spotify. So for those of you guys who like that platform, I've been getting asked to post there for a while. They accepted me into the partner program, and I'm now posting on Spotify. So shout out to them. Link will be in the comments or description. Go tap in, follow me on Spotify so you get notified when I post. And yeah, without further ado, let's dive into the video. Now, this is going to be an interesting video in the Consequence series because acid is the first psychedelic that we've really discussed in any of these Consequence videos. And acid happens to be my former favorite psychedelic, and I would say probably my favorite drug when I was younger. All the way up until just a couple years ago, I really had an extreme fondness for acid. I viewed it as my favorite psychedelic, one of my favorite drugs, and I ate a lot of it. I mean, there was summers where I was tripping every other day, sometimes every single day for a week straight, and just frying my brain. And you know, the way that I consumed acid is I was never looking for an introspective experience. I was never looking to open my third eye or enlighten myself. When I take psychedelics, I'm here to have fun. I want to see the wall move, okay? I want to see the lamp in the corner talk to me, okay? I want my friend to look terrifying. I want to think that there's the Cookie Monster coming up my staircase to grab me and touch me in ways that if I say, I'll probably get banned on YouTube. Listen, acid's fun for me. That's the only reason I ever consumed it. It was never a deep introspective, wow, I learned a lot about myself kind of trip. Always, I just wanted to make myself retarded. Now, I think an important place to start this video, and in my opinion, the biggest of all the consequences in taking acid, and this isn't going to affect everybody, and honestly, it hasn't really affected me too much, but is the potential to just completely one-shot your brain on this drug. Now, obviously, we all know that psychedelics can bring out underlying mental health issues, but it's a lot more than that. You know, even if you are somebody who doesn't have an underlying mental health issue that's brought out by an acid trip, you can still have a bad trip that's genuinely traumatic, and that can leave you with feelings that are similar to PTSD. And I'm not going to lie, when I had a bad acid trip, I definitely was probably scarred for life away from doing acid. And I said probably there, but I don't really mean it. I have no intent of ever taking the drug again. And that's after I just told you guys that it was probably my favorite drug ever up until my bad trip experience. It's something that I've watched a lot of my friends have actual psychotic episodes off of. And obviously, a lot of people are going to say, well, Goblin, you know, this could just be caused by the mental health issues these people have. And that, you know, is true. I'm not going to deny that. Obviously, if you don't have any underlying mental health issues, then there's not anything that's going to be brought up by taking acid. But you can't just blame that on the mental health issues. You know, that's also being brought up by the psychedelic trip. And it's a consequence that, while maybe you shouldn't blame it on the drug entirely, you should be aware of it. And it's something that I think more people need to talk about. You know, I recently on my podcast spoke with a dude named Blazin Asian. I'm going to shout him out here real quick, but he had a very public mental health break, and it was due to weed. But when we sat down and we had this conversation, he told me his first ever psychotic episode that he had was actually off a bad acid trip. And something that I notice whenever people post online and talk about their mental health episodes, specifically when they relate to drugs, is you have a lot of drug users that they come into the comment section and they deny it effectively. They say, well, you're just crazy. You know, the drug has nothing to do with that. And that kind of conduct, that kind of behavior, those kind of comments make it so people can't talk about these mental health experiences. And that shit is a problem. It's why so many mental health episodes happen because of psychedelic drugs, because people aren't educated on it. People aren't aware that you can have a mental health episode off of psychedelics. This is a type of drug that isn't like any others. Like, obviously, long-term cocaine use or meth use or crack use or heroin use or whatever can give you a mental break, a psychotic break, or many different depression, many different types of mental health issues. But psychedelics are very unique in the fact that it can just take one small dose. And even when that drug wears off, you're still stuck in that mindset. When people talk about permatripping, they're talking about mental health episodes, okay? People aren't actually just on acid for weeks straight or months straight. These people had a psychotic break when they dosed their acid, and then they permatripped. That's what that term is really referring to. When I was younger, I had a friend of mine named Isaac, who I talked about a lot of times on this channel, and he was probably my first ever encounter with mental health and acid intertwining. I obviously had been around people that had had bad trips, but he was the first person I had been around that actually was having real psychotic and schizophrenic episodes from his psychedelic use. He was a friend of mine who was very open about being schizophrenic. He would hear voices and see people that weren't there when it would get really bad, and the psychedelic use would make it worse. And we dropped acid together very regularly. And this guy, after his acid trips, especially if he dosed a lot, while we were tripping, it would start off light. He'd be like, "Did you guys see that? There's two dudes standing under the light pole over there. They were just chilling. You guys didn't see that?" Like, oh, whatever. He was very lighthearted about it. He would joke about it. But then the next day would come around and we're all sober, and, you know, everyone else in the group that had tripped that day prior was just going about their day normally. Maybe we had met up to smoke. Isaac would call us. He'd be like, "Yo, did you guys get followed home yesterday? They were looking through my window watching me sleep." And he'd be dead serious about it. We'd be like, "No, dude, didn't happen to us." We'd kind of laugh it off because I didn't really understand it yet. Kind of laugh it off. "No, dude, that didn't happen to us. Come smoke." He'd come pull up, drive over, mind you, while in this mental state. The quote unquote perma trip, you know, is a good term. He'd pull up. I remember this so vividly. He came one day, and he's sitting in the garage at our friend Nate's house. And he's looking all around because he thinks his dad followed him over. He was really paranoid schizophrenic, and the psychedelics really just made it a permanent thing. Even despite taking his medication, the psychedelics almost overlapped his meds. It didn't matter. He was just locked the fuck into this. He'd be like, I think my dad's over there. Do you guys see my dad? My dad, I think, is going to come over here and probably be pissed. I had to look out for my dad. He came over. I don't even remember if he hit the blunt or not, ran the fuck out. He would do this all the time. After that, I had a bit of a better understanding, and I had a lot of other friends I started to notice were having these mental health episodes specifically after acid use. And it can happen with shrooms too. I don't want you guys to think this is a uniquely LSD occurrence, because it's not. Any psychedelic that is, you know, giving you audio and, I don't know, what audio visual hallucinations, what's the term that I'm looking for here? There's definitely like a proper term that I'm looking for here that I'm not remembering. But at the end of the day, any drug that gives you those types of experiences is really prone to bring out some mental health issues, you know? And that's something that I wish more people were able to be open about and talk about genuinely. I think people on the internet clown on people who have public mental health episodes. They always, that sticks with people forever. And then that person who had that mental health episode is never allowed to talk about it. They're never allowed to go and be like, yeah, you know, it was drug induced because of this, because everyone just views them as crazy. It's like their word is no good anymore because they had a perma trip, they had a psychotic break, they had a bad episode, and, you know, other people saw it. And I want a lot of you guys watching this video too to understand that if you've had like a psychotic episode off psychedelics or something, or some sort of mental break where you were doing some crazy shit, that doesn't make you less of a drug user. That doesn't make you a nutcase. It just makes you someone that maybe shouldn't take another tab of acid in the future, which is completely okay. That's a very normal thing. But when people talk about acid, they just talk about bad trips. The most common thing is, oh, a bad trip. Here's how to shut down a bad trip. But you could just take a Xan or two to end a bad trip. It'll knock you the fuck out. You can't really do that when you enter psychosis. A Xan might put you to sleep. You're going to wake up the next day and still be in a psychosis, okay? It's not going to cure your mental health issue that maybe was initially triggered by the psychedelic use. That's something that's not talked about enough, and that's the most important first consequence I wanted to talk about. Now, The second thing I want to talk about here is how derealizing acid is as a drug. I'm a person, listen, I've never done DMT. Obviously, that's probably the number one contender for this. But acid just makes the days fly by and not feel real. The clock isn't a real concept. Time is just a number that's, floating around with all the other numbers in space time. And it's completely irrelevant whenever you're tripping. And when I was younger, I think one of the worst consequences of my use and something that I really struggled with was keeping my grip on reality and like what day it was even and what my responsibilities were for the week or when the last time I had even checked my bank account or like paid my phone bill was. Acid was one of those drugs that just washes away all sense of responsibility, all your entire grip on what's happening the following day. Because let's say, I was the kind of person who would parachute my doses. I would take a tab, I'd wait 3 hours, and then I'd drop a second tab. And I'd wait 3 hours and drop a third. I would stay up for 24 hours straight tripping relatively often. And after that, obviously, you need to sleep. Minimum 8 hours of sleeping. Your trip isn't over until you sleep. No matter how long it's been since you dosed, in my opinion, the trip's not truly over till you sleep. And I would wake up the following day and realize that the past 30 hours were just walls melting and the ceiling smiling at me and the carpet groping me and like my girl looking like she's about to shoot me in the side of the head every time I make eye contact. Just some real fuck shit. And when you wake up from that, you still feel disoriented. The afterglow of acid, one part of it is, yeah, if you had a great trip, you're going to feel that happy afterglow. There's no denying that. I felt that a lot. But I could also never shake that derealization. It's almost like, you guys know that feeling when you wake up in the middle of the night and it was like peak sleep, like you had just reached your REM sleep. Maybe you're 5 of your 8 hours into sleep and you get woken up suddenly and you can't fall back asleep. And you just have that feeling for the rest of the day where it's almost like you're floating. Nothing is real. You're not tired, but you're not awake. You're not sharp, but you're not dull. You're just floating. That's the feeling that acid would give me long term after I'd go through these months and months of tripping every other day. And it was something that took me months and months to go away. I remember my peak acid use was probably right before I got sentenced to probation and then put in rehab shortly after, which was 2016. Prior to that, the months leading up, probably starting in, I don't know, maybe the beginning of 2016, so almost 9-10 months straight, I was dosing multiple times a week. There was never really a point that I stopped. I didn't like shrooms. So acid was my go-to, my favorite drug. I dosed all the time. When I first got sentenced to probation and then got put into rehab, that first probably month being in rehab just did not feel fucking real. I mean, there was a lot of things about it, and you could argue, hey, it's the rehab that didn't feel real. You were feeling that way because you were in this completely different environment in a residential facility in a different state. But there was just this general, like, you almost don't even feel human needs. Like, I would wake up every day and I didn't feel hunger. I ate because my brain is just like, hey, probably should do that. Everyone else is. I'd wake up, I wouldn't watch TV and get dopamine in my brain or do something fun like play chess with one of the other people on my unit and get dopamine in my brain or smile and laugh. It was just like I'm going to do this because it's better than just sitting and staring at the wall. And it was really hard to deal with because sometimes when I would sit still and I'd not be preoccupied doing something, it would almost feel like I would start tripping again. If I stared at patterns, whether it would be a rug or a wallpaper or a ceiling tile long enough, it would start moving and I'd have to do double takes and almost second guess myself like, wait, did that just move? Am I tripping right now? And that really just fucked with my entire sense of reality. It took me a long time after getting out of that loop of just taking acid all the time, but even getting out of that rehab facility to honestly feel like a real normal person again. And I was still doing other drugs when I was on probation, but none of the other drugs really gave me that effect. Maybe blow a little bit because I was doing it so much and, so aggressively, but acid just, it plops you into a different mental state. It's very warm, it's very cuddly, and because of the amount of time that acid takes up, it causes a lot of problems pretty quick. When you're tripping for 12, 16, 20 hours in a day, you're ignoring a lot of responsibilities naturally, and the following day when you wake up and you still don't feel like this is real life, and then you're faced with those responsibilities. For me, it was my mom would come in yelling at me because maybe I didn't feed the dog, and she got a call from school and I didn't show up for like the millionth fucking time, and that meant that they were going to refer it to the school resource officer, who would then call and fearmonger my mom, talk about you could go to jail for that, even though, hey, that's not going to fucking happen. The time consumption causes a lot of problems with acid, and that's a trait that I think is only shared by Xanax, because a lot of other drugs, you could be somewhat functional, you can be productive, you can't really do anything on acid. You're not going to work tripping balls. Maybe, you'll do it occasionally, but like, you're not going to work every day being a functional person off acid. And if you are, you're going to end up fried in the head pretty quickly. Very, very quickly. Now, the next consequence I want to talk about, and this isn't a consequence of consuming the drug more so as it is a precaution that I really hope you guys take. Acid is by far the most difficult drug to identify a fake with. You should always have a test kit. However, I understand fully well that probably 80 to 90% of you guys out there are not going to use a test kit the next time you drop a tab of acid. Your test kit is your tongue. And I understand that completely. I'm also a person who is a walking drug test kit. I don't buy one of those. I test the drugs myself. However, as someone who has experienced fake acid and a bad trip from that fake acid, it is the genuine worst thing ever to drop a tab and then realize that it's bad and it's too late to go back. Let me explain that a little bit. Now, when you take a real tab of acid, a paper tab of acid, which is the most common form that I consumed when I was younger, it shouldn't taste like anything. There's no flavor to LSD. It's nothing. It's almost like water. There's just water without the minerals, the most boring distilled water you can think of. No flavor besides that paper. So when you drop a tab and you taste something, or maybe you take some liquid LSD, there's a twang to it of any sort, you should be deeply, deeply concerned. The problem there is that by the time you've tasted it, it's too late. With a paper tab, you can maybe spit it out and you can get some of that, stuck on the paper tab still, but you've absorbed a lot of it almost immediately. If you dropped liquid, good luck, buddy. You better start throwing up. And even then, that's not going to work. Too late, pal. Acid is unique because really, if you don't have a test kit, it's just balls to the wall. Yeah, I hope this is decent. There's no way to even eyeball it. For example, with a bag of blow, guy like me, listen, my nose is fucked up, okay? I can fold that shit like a folding chair, all right? There's no cartilage left in it. I can eyeball a bag pretty quickly, and I can tell you what's cracking with it. Now, I'm not going to tell you the exact purity of it like I'm Gustavo Fring or some shit, but I can generally look at a bag and be like, oh, that's probably re-rock. Oh, that's too powdery. Oh, the glisten, the shine on it isn't right. I can't do that with a tab of acid. And it's the worst drug to not be able to do that with. Because a bad psychedelic trip is traumatizing. It's horrible. At best, you're just going to have a really rough 8 to 12 hours. If you're lucky, your bad trip really ends when you go to sleep at the end of that bad trip. But for a lot of people, that bad trip happens still when you wake up the next day. And then you're really in some fucking trouble. Buy a test kit. It's really, really important, especially if you're a psychedelic user. And if not, just understand that every time you take a tab of acid, you genuinely are risking a bad experience from a drug that actually isn't LSD. That could also potentially taint your perception of LSD forever. Because you take it thinking it's real and you're just like, man, I just had a bad trip, I'm never going to do it. And really, that shit wasn't even acid. I think one of the worst consequences of acid, too, and this is more of just a personal one, but acid really makes you overthink the most minor shit. And listen, I'm not a very emotional guy, especially around my friends. I genuinely am not. It's not because I don't share those things. It's just like, listen, dude, you're not going to catch me crying at the funeral. I'm smoking one for Auntie. That's how we go. But I remember this was years and years ago when I was in high school. I had a couple friends over. My mom was out of town for a funeral for one of my older relatives who had died. There was this period when I was young, between when I was 10 to 20, dude, probably half my family got smoked. I don't know what happened. Motherfuckers were getting spliffed outside, okay? But my mom's out of town. I'm up to no good. All the homies are coming over. We're tripping balls. It was me and my buddy. A couple of my buddies were over. And I remember we're in my living room watching the OG Spider-Man movie. I don't even remember who the fuck was there. I mean, guessing at the time it was probably Kyle. It was probably Bobby. I don't know, but I honestly don't even remember who it was. I just remember we were watching the OG Spider-Man from like the Tobey Maguire one, and Uncle Ben's fucking death scene came on, and it was like as I was tripping balls, I was almost peaking, I would say, and also on top of that, my relative had just fucking died. I think this was my great grandma's funeral that my mom was out of town for. Yeah, it was my great grandma. She was old as fuck. Mind you, my great grandmother, this was not some like deep connection. I think I had met her one time when I was like 4 years old. This woman hadn't seen me since I couldn't even write my fucking name. All right. But Uncle Ben's death scene came on. Dude, I'm tripping balls. I'm like, yo, that's my grandma, my great grandma dying on the screen. I'm thinking of the connection. I'm thinking in my head, yo, you guys remember the scene in Spider-Man? It's like he's dying on the ground. Toby's leaning, or Spider-Man's leaning over him. He's like, Uncle Ben, like, no, like it's the saddest death. I'm sitting there thinking, like, I should have been there when my grandma died like that. That's how I should have been. Dude, I got real emotional about it. I remember I paused the movie. I picked up that shitty little Comcast remote. Dude, I paused the movie. I was like, oh my God. I was like, yo, we got to change it or something. We got to put on like Planet Earth. My homie's like, why? What's going on? I'm venting to him, dude. This is not like me at all. I'm like, man, my great grandma would have wanted me there, bro. Like she would have. Mind you, instead of being at the funeral, I'm at the crib tripping dick, smoking blunts in the living room, no windows open. Okay, I could have gone with. Hell nah. I don't even think they wanted me in that bitch. The more I think about it, I would have tore that funeral up. They had any sort of alcohol unsupervised at any point, I'm gone. It's over. Yeah, they didn't want me there. But either way, when I was tripping, I wanted me there. I'm like, damn, yo, grandma. I wasn't even by grandma's side. She died thinking that I'm not going to swing across the city and kill Sandman for her, bro. Like, this shit is fucked up. Like, I see the relation between me and Spider-Man right now. That's the stupid shit that you only cry about when you're tripping like 3 tabs deep, okay? Now, I was teary-eyed. I'm not going to say I was crying, okay, because I'm a proud man. But, man, maybe the closest I've ever been was when I saw Uncle Ben die. The same week that my great-grandmother, who I met once when I was 3, died, and I was tripping. It was deep. And, it's not really that bad of a consequence, but it just puts you in those scenarios because it's still something to this day. It's one of those moments like those cringe things you look back on in your life. You remember it and you almost shiver a little bit. You shudder. You twitch. Your eye twitches a little bit. It's like, oh, God, I want to forget that. That's one of those few instances like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I didn't do that. And also, I can't even count on my fingers the amount of relationships that I fucked up while tripping, okay? I remember one time, to be fair, this is a very toxic relationship. When I was younger, I was dating this girl and I was tripping balls. And I remember I FaceTimed her. We were maybe like a month into dating. And this was the same girl, old story on my channel. We were arguing over text while I was tripping and I threw my phone at a rock and broke it. This is the same girl. I called this girl one time when I was tripping. And my friends have been gassing me up to like not fuck with her anymore. I was talking about our relationship when I was tripping. All my friends were like, dude, like she sucks, dude. You should stop talking to her. I called her. I went crazy, low key. I was like, yo, listen, I just wanted to let you know, like, I've really been thinking a lot about us and like you're just not for me. Like I was honestly really I was really mean. I was really horrible about it. I was like, you're not for me. Like, I don't really like your attitude. And, like, you're honestly not funny. Like, your jokes don't make me laugh. Like, I was a fucked up person. Acid puts you in a lot of those situations where you wake up the next day and you just have to write a really awkward apology to a lot of people. Another trait that I'd say is maybe only shared by Xanax and shrooms. Shrooms will do that, too. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Play me some Drake off the shrooms, dude. I'm writing an essay. Either way, I think we'll call it here because honestly, acid's not that bad. I'm doing a consequence video on all of the drugs, and acid is a drug, and I did a lot of it, so it has to be on here. But if you're not the kind of person who ends up having a mental health issue that maybe is caused by your acid use or maybe is brought up by your psychedelic use, there's not a lot wrong with it. It's just the derealization. But if you're just like an unemployed goat like myself, that doesn't really matter, does it? So you could just be in the fake world. Fuck it. We're outside. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Drop a like if you did. Get me to 1 million subs, please and thank you. I'll see you all in the next one. Deuces.